June 18th, 1815, 3:45 p.m. The Mont St. John Ridge, Waterloo, Belgium. The air reeks of sulfur and wet earth. Through the gray powder smoke drifting across the plateau, Lieutenant Colonel Sir Colin Halkett, commanding the 5th British Brigade, watches the French artillery fall silent. For 30 minutes, Napoleon's Grand Battery, 80 guns strong, has hammered Wellington's ridge with round shot and howitzer shells, tearing gaps in the red-coated ranks, pulverizing the reverse slope where infantry huddle behind the crest. Now suddenly, the guns cease. Something is coming. Below the ridge, through clearing smoke, Halkett sees movement. Not infantry columns this time. Horses. Thousands upon thousands of horses. The earth begins to tremble with a sound like distant thunder. Marshal Ney, Napoleon's most aggressive commander, the bravest of the brave, is massing cavalry on the slope below. Regiments of steel-armored cuirassiers with breastplates gleaming dully in the overcast light. Elite carabiniers in white uniforms. Lancers with pennants snapping. Chasseurs in green. Over 4,000 horsemen are forming in dense columns. Squares, form squares. The command ripples across Wellington's line. Drums rattle the familiar cadence. Battalion after battalion transforms. Red-coated companies wheeling with parade ground precision, despite the mud clinging to their boots, despite the wounded screaming, despite the French cavalry now beginning to move uphill. The 28th Foot, the 33rd, the 69th, the Coldstream Guards, each regiment forming the defensive formation that has protected British infantry from cavalry for generations. 4 ranks deep, bayonets bristling outward like steel hedgehogs, muskets loaded. And here they come. The first wave strikes at 4 p.m. sharp. Nearly 2,000 cuirassiers, the 1st and 2nd regiments, surge up the muddy slope at the trot, then the canter, building to a full gallop. Their sabers are raised high, their helmets topped with horsehair plumes streaming behind them. The sound is overwhelming, hoofbeats hammering waterlogged ground, leather creaking, steel armor plates rattling, men roaring "Vive l'Empire!" Captain Rhys Gronow, standing in the front rank of the 1st Foot Guard square, feels his hands tighten on his Brown Bess musket. The horses seem impossibly large, impossibly fast. 300 yards, 200. Inside the square, Sergeant Major Timothy Matthews bellows, "Steady, lads, hold your fire." 100 yards. "Front rank, fire!" The volley erupts with a deafening crash. Smoke bursts from the square's face as 60 muskets discharge simultaneously. At 50 yards range, the .75 caliber balls slam into horses and riders. Cuirassiers tumble from saddles. Horses scream and fall, their steel-shod hooves thrashing. But the charge doesn't stop. The cavalry divides like water around a rock, streaming past the square's corners, some horsemen firing pistols point blank, others slashing downward with their heavy cavalry sabers, trying to reach the kneeling front rank. "Second rank, fire!" Another thunderous volley, more saddles emptied. The cuirassiers swirl around the square, trapped in the killing ground between multiple British formations. French officers scream orders, trying to rally their men for another pass. Within minutes, the first wave pulls back down the slope, leaving dozens of dead and wounded behind. But Marshal Ney is only beginning. Ney commits everything. The second wave arrives within minutes, carabiniers and more cuirassiers, 3,000 strong. Then a third wave, a fourth. By 4:30 p.m., over 12,000 French cavalrymen are churning across Wellington's ridge in successive charges, the largest cavalry assault in the entire Napoleonic Wars. The plateau becomes a nightmarish landscape of smoke, screaming horses, and defiant red squares, standing like islands in a sea of horsemen. Inside the 28th Regiment square, Private Thomas Hasker reloads with mechanical precision despite his hand shaking. bite cartridge, pour powder down the barrel, ram ball and wadding, prime the pan, shoulder the musket. The process takes 18 seconds. 18 seconds during which French cavalry thunder past barely 10 feet away. A cuirassier's saber point scrapes across the bayonets of the front rank. A riderless horse, eyes rolling in terror, crashes into the square's face and impales itself on the steel hedge. Fire! The volleys come in rhythmic succession now, each rank firing in turn to maintain continuous fire. The French cavalry charge again and again, courage beyond question, discipline intact despite mounting losses. They capture British guns positioned between the squares. Wellington's artillery crews flee into the infantry formations for protection. But cavalry cannot hold ground, cannot spike the cannons, cannot break the bristling walls of bayonets. Colonel Sir John Ormsby Vandeleur, commanding the 4th British Cavalry Brigade, watches from behind the ridge as Ney's horsemen swirl in apparent chaos, unable to penetrate a single square. By God, they come on bravely, but bravery alone won't break British infantry. By 6 p.m., the charges finally cease. Marshal Ney's horse, his 5th of the day, has been killed beneath him. His uniform is torn, his face blackened with powder smoke, his legendary courage spent against infantry that would not, could not be broken. The slope between La Haye-Sainte and the ridge crest is carpeted with dead and dying horses, with cuirassiers crawling through mud, their beautiful armor now dented and blood-streaked, with carabiniers lying motionless in their white coats turned red. Of the 12,000 French cavalry who charged Wellington's squares, over 4,000 were casualties, killed, wounded, or unhorsed with mounts dead beneath them. The British and Allied squares have suffered too. Musket volleys can only do so much against such overwhelming numbers, and French pistol fire, carbine shots, and the occasional brave cuirassier who reached the bayonet line have taken their toll. But they held. Every single square held. Lieutenant Colonel Halkett walks among his men as they reform into line, stepping over French helmets and broken swords. The defensive success is total, unprecedented, unbelievable. Wellington's ridge remains intact, the French cavalry arm is shattered, and most critically, Napoleon's hope of breaking the Anglo-Allied line before Prussian reinforcements arrive has failed. When the Prussians arrive hours later, when the Imperial Guard makes its final desperate attack, when Napoleon's empire finally collapses at 9 p.m. that night, historians will remember these 2 hours as the moment the battle truly turned. 12,000 horsemen, dozens of charges, legendary courage meets immovable discipline, and not a single square broken.